So I've been thinking a lot about just my life and all the different changes going on, and how best to navigate those.
The big changes, right?
Yeah, the big changes.
Yeah.
The small ones seem relatively easy, but those
Right.
really big changes,
Yeah.
how do you navigate those?
Right. How do we navigate those places in our lives that are so fundamental, so important, and how do we navigate them when those things shatter? That's when we really get tested, right? If we're climbing the mountain of life and it's a beautiful sunny day and there's just, a cloud passes and it gets a little bit chilly for a minute, we can navigate that. But what do we do when the storm blows in, when it's really, really tough? And one way to look at that is to recognize that the parts of our lives that do shatter and feel so cataclysmic, if we can look at them and say, well, that might be a part of my life, the construct of life or the conditions of life, the relationship, the work, that I built from an old identity, from an old, more egoic way of witnessing and viewing the world. When I believed that I was this small, separate entity, separate from everything else, that needed to be defended, that needed to have parts of a less whole sense of self, that maybe created a relationship to fill the holes, to give me a sense of completeness. Mm-hmm. If those shatter in our lives, what an incredible opportunity then to rebuild from who we truly are, right?
Yeah.
From our new understanding of who we are, our new understanding of our infinite nature. How beautiful to rebuild a life from, I know myself as an infinite being, the part of me that has never been born and will never die, the indestructible nature of myself. I'd much rather construct a world around me, from that identity than from the egoic identity. So it gives us an opportunity. And sometimes a lot of the people I work with, and with myself as well, and all the times my life is shattered, oftentimes I was just trying to remodel my life. I was trying to fit old, new ideas, new ways of being with old foundations. And sometimes, if you do any construction, you recognize that trying to match the new stuff to the old stuff is really hard. And sometimes we just got to do a complete teardown. And it feels really, really, really vulnerable to do a complete teardown, to let parts of our life shatter. And the part of us that feels vulnerable is the egoic state that built those constructs in the first place. That's the thing that doesn't want to let go. That's the thing that's panicking and screaming and saying, no, I built this for a really good reason. But then we have this new sense of self that says, yeah, and I don't need to protect myself like that, like I used to. I think sometimes and you'll hear people often say, when big parts of their lives fall apart, they'll say, oh my God, I just feel so disillusioned right now. And they say it with remorse, right? Oh, this is terrible, I feel so disillusioned. And I want to look at them and say, yes, yay, perfect. Disillusioned, you feel you're letting go of the old illusion. And it feels vulnerable, but you're replacing it with authenticity, with an integrity itself.
So celebrate that.
Yeah, to celebrate it. And perhaps if we can rebuild, reconstruct, redesign, have the fresh, and see our lives through the fresh perspectives, that we don't have to rebuild with such rigidity. It's not just replacing old rigid beliefs with new rigid beliefs and new rigid structures. We learn to build less rigid structures of life that are much more flexible and able to change with the wind, change with the seasons, change with the conditions. So that's a beautiful thing, to be able to rebuild from this place of saying, yeah, I don't have to, again, hold so tightly and build a new prison. Just build a new prison. Build a life that's able to change, that's able to stay present with what is, what's now, what's true now, what's true now, what's true now. How can I shift and adapt and change to that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the cataclysmic changes that happen in people's lives are often because they're trying to hold on to a rigid structure they've built amidst a life that is always changing. So it's like an earthquake, that these tectonic plates are trying to shift. Our life is trying to shift in different ways, and yet we're trying to maintain. No, don't shift, don't shift. So we're holding it in place, holding it in place, holding it in place, and it wants to change, and it wants to change. And finally, when it does, it's huge. Like it's just major disruption, and it shakes us to our core because we've been trying to hold on so tight. So we learn to not hold on so tight to our beliefs, to our positions, to our conclusions. And then things can shift and change as they need to, instead of waiting, and then suddenly there's a big shift. And what a beautiful thing, isn't it? When we can then find ourselves with the rubble around us of the old construct that was constraining. And we couldn't fit in it any longer. We kept trying to fit in it, but our true nature, our infinite nature, our expansive nature couldn't fit in the old construct anymore. And it finally busts apart. And there we are in the rubble, and how often it is that we can then look around and go, oh my God, I had no idea the prison I was in. I had no idea how dark it was until the walls fell away and the new light came streaming in and new possibilities. I could see them. We can't see it while we're in it. We don't know. So let it fall away. Let it shatter. Let it shatter. Perhaps the shatterings don't have to be as big if we learn to live with more flexibility and grace. But to always allow the idea that our constructs of life are always going to be shifting and changing and falling away and rebuilding all the time.